This story takes place in 2015. I was just 17 at the time, working at Chuck E. Cheese. And honestly, it was one of my most favorite jobs. The amount of work you actually had to do was pretty minimal, besides when there would be large gatherings or birthday parties to take care of. What made it even better was that I got the job because my older brother was the manager. And when I applied, I just had to say that we weren't related, which nobody would suspect a thing because we had different last names. Now onto the story. I remember it being later into the year, possibly October or November, because it was already starting to get quite cold outside. We had this all at the front of the building so families wouldn't come in and walk over black ice. The staff had been reduced to merely me and my older brother, and the girl, who I will call Samantha. Now, Samantha wasn't very much older than myself, only being maybe 6 months older, and we were going to the same high school. She was pretty nice to talk to most of the time, but she kept to herself. I can recall having only a handful of conversations with her, but she always gave me this very strange vibe. I had brought up Samantha to my older brother a number of times, when I would be working and I would just catch her staring at me. Whenever I would make eye contact, she wouldn't look away. She would just keep staring straight at me and not saying a word, or really showing any body language. Now, that's not too creepy, I suppose. Maybe she was just socially awkward. But when you're a 17-year-old and a girl stares at you like that, you get mixed signals. Samantha also walked to work every single day. She didn't have a car, and when I would ask her if she ever needed a ride, she would always say no, but she would thank me. I didn't really carry the conversation on after that. I just went about my day and went back home. Now this is where things get strange. One day while I was leaving work and heading home, I had forgotten my wallet in the employee area. I decided to turn back around to get it, as I had the combination to the lock and the spare key to get in, that my brother would let me use in the mornings to open up before he got there. And when I came into the building, I noticed something pretty strange. It looked like the lights of the kitchen were on, and one of the TVs that we had playing in the lobby was also on, which is strange because whenever we closed, we would turn off all the appliances, and it would get completely dark inside. I figured we must have forgotten to turn those off. It was kind of a long day, so I didn't really think too much of it, and I went on to the employee's room. That's when I was caught off guard. There on the ground sleeping was Samantha, and next to her was some sort of smoking apparatus that I imagined she would use for drugs and other sort of paraphernalia. I was easy not to make a sound to alert her of my presence, but from the looks of it, she didn't look to be all there. I found my wallet and made my way back to the door, and once I got outside and back to my truck, I immediately called my brother. I know I should have called the cops, but I was 17, and I didn't have a really good history with the cops at the time, in my small town anyways. I told them of the situation and told them to come back to the store immediately. I waited there for a long time, and I noticed 3 sheriff's department vehicles pulling up with their lights on. I was asked to put my hands up and I agreed. I told them who I was and that the person they were most likely looking for was still inside. That's about the time my brother arrived and told the cops the whole situation, and told them that he was the one who made the phone call. What's really strange is that the police said that it wasn't a man who called, but a woman apparently, and she called herself Sandra, and said that she was lost and needed help, and that there was a very strange man that had attacked her. They were able to go off the phone number that she dialed to find the location, and apparently the phone number that she had used was the one inside the store. When the cops entered the building, Samantha was nowhere to be found. They went back and still nothing. They even went as far as to question me and my brother if we were pulling a prank. We said no and that this is serious. And unfortunately, we didn't have any security cameras in the store at the time. It was an older location that had cameras, but they didn't function any longer. When we got the cops Samantha's information on her private file that we kept in the manager's office, they looked into her social security number and home address, which came up with nothing. There's been an active investigation as to who Samantha was, or may have been, or if that really was her real name. I never saw her at school again, and it still remains as one of the largest mysteries of my small town. I don't know who she was or what she wanted, but it is something I still think about from time to time. If you've ever considered taking your children to Chuck E. Cheese to have a birthday party, I highly recommend you don't. It's incredibly disgusting on the inside. All the vomit, shit, and piss that kids make in the play area is oftentimes overlooked by our management, and they don't really care for its employees. They only pay minimum wage, so the employees only do minimum effort. Now, with all that being said, let me get on to the story. I worked for Chuck E. Cheese for over 10 years. I've seen a lot of things, and I've heard a lot of other stories, but this one is my own. And it still remains as one of the most disgusting stories I will ever tell. When I first started working for Chuck E. Cheese back in 1995, it was actually a pretty great place. The people in charge at the time took pride in the company. But as time went on and new people were put in charge, the standards became less and less, down to the point where hosting birthday parties was more of a nightmare than something of a good time. The Chuck E. Cheese suit was never washed, and smelled like that of piss and vinegar from the inside. The younger staff that were employed to wear the suits were often females that were small enough to fit inside. They would only work for the company for a short period of time, probably due to this and all the shit stains that they would have to clean inside the slides and ball pit. But I digress. Now back to the story. The day started out like most do, me wondering why I'm still working at this job, and if I should have gone back to college. Phone calls here and there, and moms overanalyzing their children's birthday parties, and trying to get everything dirt cheap. When this family that wasn't exactly in the most best shape entered, they were all a little bit overweight, and when the father passed me, he smelled like that of actual dog shit. It was pretty disgusting to say the least. They were all breathing pretty heavily. The buffet had just started, so I figured they were here for that, and they grabbed their plates one by one and stacked them up to the very top, which I thought was strange because you can always come back for more. It was getting pretty slow at this point, so I kind of was just keeping an eye on the family, as most of the tasks had been done for the day. I looked at the family's kids and they went on to play, and the father and possibly mother sat at the table eating. They must have been there for what felt like all day, but was more or less 2 to 3 hours of just eating. The father periodically going outside to smoke and the children just making an absolute shitstorm of a mess. Now, we're not actually supposed to tell people that they're overdoing it on the buffet, but we're getting to a point where we couldn't even keep up with the demand of pizzas this family was eating. We were getting complaints of people that had paid and couldn't even eat because his family was literally coming up as soon as the pizza came out and taking the entire pizza back to their table. Finally, I thought the nightmare was over when I saw the father and the mother and their children leaving the store. They seemed to leave in a pretty fast manner, even being so kind as to clean up the table a bit. As one of my employees went to go do a cleanup of the play area, that's when he came back to me screaming. It was something like out of a horror movie. Families around us all in shock, as if someone had just been murdered. I quickly ran to him and see what all the commotion was about, and that's when I saw it. The entire slide that led into the ball pit was covered in what looked like vomit, and pizza, pepperoni, macaroni, you name it. It was truly a sight to behold. I immediately closed off the play area and apologized to the families that were still there, telling them that it would be closed for the rest of the evening, and sorry for the inconvenience, even going as far as giving them complimentary coupons to make up for the whole ordeal. Now, we've had homeless people here that have been found wandering inside the building. We've had little fights break out between families, but it still remains to this day to be one of the scariest things I've ever witnessed at my time at Chuck E. Cheese. I pray to God nobody ever has to see what I did that very day. If you guys have ever been to Chuck E. Cheese, or better yet worked there, then you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Throughout the day, one of the employees will get inside a Chuck E. Cheese costume, and will come out and dance and play with the kids, giving out free tickets. And oftentimes the kids will be pretty nice and give you a hug every now and then. But then sometimes you come across a kid that would go for a low punch. This isn't the scary part of the story, but I'd figure I'd throw it out there. So I'm a pretty average built female, 5'5", blonde with blue eyes, and I'm pretty fit. I started working at Chuck E. Cheese during college to make up for some income that I needed. Nothing too much, only part-time work. And it was a pretty good job at first. I really enjoyed my coworkers, talking to the kids, and I would even come in and help them with their selections for prizes. But things quickly changed when this man would come in with his children. He was a little bit over-friendly, and his name was Mark. I know this because he would always say his name to me every time he would come into the store, as if I hadn't heard it 30 other times before. What's even more creepy is that when he would come into the store, he would always flirt with me. Now keep in mind that Mark was a good 20 years older than me, and also Mark was married. I knew this because he had a tan ring around his finger, where a ring would have been worn, but I could tell he took it off before he came into the store. His children were not much older than 4 to 5 years old, and they were honestly pretty good kids, always giving me big smiles and waves when they would come in, and I would give them an extra toy from time to time. The thing I found most odd about Mark is that he would bring his family in around 3 p.m. each day, and they would stay until close. Oftentimes Mark would just sit there at the booth staring at me, and it made me feel very uncomfortable, to the point where I told my manager and he said that he meant no harm, that he'd been coming to the location for years. Still, he came off very awkward to me, and made me feel nervous even being there. I told my manager I'd much rather be in the back of the store helping make the food, and no longer be in the front whenever Mark was there. Unfortunately, we were so understaffed that this really wasn't an option for me. But I think this is kind of what drew the line for me one day. Mark came in with his kids and they were doing the usual, and sitting there at the booth staring at me. From time to time, his kids would be playing and I'd do my best not to make eye contact with him. Now, I had to walk past this table at one point to take care of some cleaning that needed to be done on some of the tables behind him. When I walked past Mark, I could still feel his eyes burning into the back of my head, making me extremely nervous, and my anxiety was rising. As I was leaning over to clean one of the tables, I feel a hand pressed against my hips. This kind of threw me off guard, as I wasn't expecting anyone to be so close to me, without making a sound, that is. That's when Mark said, "Hey, I think you missed a spot." I think my manager must have seen this because he came rushing over right away, and got in between Mark and myself, and told me to go ahead and go to the back of the kitchen, that they needed me. This next part I didn't really see for myself, but was retold to me by my manager later on. Apparently Mark was upset, and said that he was just trying to have a friendly conversation with me. My manager confronted him, telling him that he had seen everything. Mark then lifted his shirt up to reveal a pistol that was in his belt line. My manager said at that point that he decided to go ahead and walk to the back of the counter and press the silent alarm that would alert the police, all the while talking to Mark, trying to calm him down. After a bit, apparently Mark had gone back to his table and got on his phone, typing away and apparently making phone calls. About 6 minutes passed, and at this point the police showed up. My manager by now had made his way to the back of the kitchen and outside the entrance in the back, around to the front of the store, where he told the police officers everything. 6 police officers had came inside and apprehended Mark, even taking his children with them. I'm not too sure what happened to them or Mark, as I haven't seen them ever again since this incident. Now it's been close to 3 years since this happened, but it still remains as one of the more creepy encounters I've had at work. I hope if anyone hears this, they aren't afraid as I was to speak up, and when someone denies you and says otherwise, to go above them and to speak to someone that will listen. Mark, I don't know if you're in jail, or if you just found another Chuck E. Cheese to go to and harass another woman, but I do hope you got the help you desperately needed, and that your children don't have to deal with someone like you anymore. Hey friends, thanks for checking out today's video. If you haven't yet, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button to be notified when I drop a new video or stream. I really hope you guys enjoy this more themed videos, as I don't typically do them. So, I know it's October and it's spooky month, and I'm trying to make some content that you guys can truly enjoy. I would love to see what you guys think. If you could take a moment of your time and just comment down below if this is something you'd be interested in, or if you're okay with the regular content. It'd be very much appreciated. And if you'd like to support me and the channel, please consider becoming a channel member or Patreon, where $1 a month gets you early access to all my videos, and your name featured on the video. With all that being said, I want to say thank you again, and remember, someone definitely just pooped inside the Chuck E. Cheese slide.